Hey there folks, welcome to the channel. I'm glad you could make it. In today's episode, we're going to be making a beautiful Italian salami. Today's recipe was submitted by a friend of mine over at the Smoking Meat Forum's website. He goes by the handle Indaswap, and I gotta tell you, it looks absolutely amazing. And this isn't the first recipe that Indaswap has submitted. Matter of fact, in season 2, we made a grilled pineapple smoked sausage that was incredible. A little bit of spicy habanero, a little bit of brown sugar. Anyway, I am very excited to get into this lemon pistachio salami. Let's get started. Today's lemon pistachio salami recipe is going to call for pork back fat. Cut this up into pieces that are small enough to fit into your grinder. And we're going to do the same thing for the pork. Notice we are using lean pork in this recipe, and you could use tenderloin, pork loin, you could use the ham section. Anyway, there's our fat, there's our lean pork. This is an 80-20 combo. Let's stick this into the freezer so that it can chill while we get our mold and bacteria ready. Something you might want to consider doing, especially if you're just getting started, is to label the container that your starter culture is going to be in. So there we wrote starter culture, that's going to be for the bacteria. And then over here, we labeled the mold container, and that's so we don't get them confused. I can't tell you how often people will write to me and say, hey, Eric, I took the mold and I added it to the meat, and I used the starter culture and brushed it on the outside. Is my stuff ruined? This will hopefully keep you from mixing the two up. All right, so we are going to be pulling a mold culture out and a starter culture out. I do try to keep everything in a vacuum bag in the coldest part of my freezer, and I would suggest you do the same. And for today's recipe, we are going to be using the starter culture known as SM194. We got this from the sausage maker. And the mold culture we're going to be using is mold 800. So it's a slightly different mold culture than what people typically use. So it'll be neat to see the flavor that it imparts. First thing I want to do is just give the culture pack a little shake. Make sure it's loose. If it's loose, then it generally means it's still good. And I'm just going to open it up and put a little bit into that distilled water that I have there in the cup. The recipe link in the description box below will have all the information that you need for how much we're adding, so on and so forth. But there we go. It's as simple as that. We're just going to give that a swirl, and that's going to sit at room temperature and rehydrate. It's also going to wake up that starter culture so that bacteria can be nice and active by the time we use it. Let's go ahead and fold that down, set it to the side, and we're going to do the exact same thing for the mold. I am preparing more mold than I need because we are making different types of salami, and I'm going to end up using it in multiple projects. But just like the starter culture, we're just going to add a small spoonful to that distilled water, and then whatever I don't use, I'll just place it in the refrigerator. Matter of fact, I made a video on how to extend the shelf life of your already prepared mold by simply adding a little sugar and salt to that liquid, and you can keep it for up to 60 days. So there we go. We've got our mold ready to go. That's also going to sit on the counter at room temperature while it rehydrates, gets active, and all that great stuff. Now, as far as both of these packs, guess what? We're going to place them back into that vacuum seal bag. This is a reusable bag I got from the sausage maker, and honestly, I think I've been using this exact bag for at least a year and a half, almost 2 years, and all I do is I vacuum it up, place it back in the freezer, and we are good to go. And if you do it this way, you can almost ignore the best use by date. We have some cultures in here that have been expired 2 or 3 years, and they still work absolutely perfect, as if they were brand new. So there we go. Our spice profile is going to be very simple for this salami. We've got salt. We've got white pepper, a little Instacure number 2. We're also going to be adding just a touch of dextrose, some turbinado sugar, as well as pistachios. The sugars that are in this recipe help balance out some of the spices, but mainly they act as food for our starter culture. What we have here is the white wine that the recipe calls for and the lemon zest that the recipe calls for. We just added those, and what we want to do is we want to just kind of infuse that white wine with that beautiful citrus element. So we have both of those together, and that's just going to hang out a little while, and I'm loving the simplicity of this so far. I mean, this just looks very delicate. I can't wait to see how it turns out. The casing that I'm going to be using for this salami is a 60mm hog casing. Now, the sausage maker has a couple different options when it comes to dried hog casings. The one that I'm holding in my hand right now is 24 inches long, and it's closed at one end. So these are kind of like ready to go. All you got to do is soak them for a minute. This other one is also 60mm, but as you can see, it's one long hog casing, and all you got to do is just cut off what you need. And so if I were going to use this, I would pull off 24 inches, cut it off, and then just put the rest up. What's cool about these dried hog casings is that they don't need refrigeration. Just put them in a cool, dark place, and you're good to go. I've been using these for a little over a year now, and I absolutely love them. To use these, you just got to rehydrate them, basically soak them in some water for 5 to 10 minutes. Nothing too crazy. I did put a little bit of water on the inside, and we're just going to stuff that into that cup, and there it is. That's going to sit on the counter. 5 to 10 minutes later, it is ready to use. Our meat is properly chilled, and the suggested way to grind this was to grind the meat on a 12 millimeter and the fat on an 8, but I didn't have a 12 or an 8 millimeter plate, so I'm just going to grind everything on a 10 millimeter plate. Great looking grind. We used the number 12 Pro Series grinder from the sausage maker, and the grinder plate and knife was just recently sharpened, and this is exactly what you want yours to look like at this stage. It's now time to mix everything together. Our meat is still relatively chilled, and so if it has warmed up too much through the grinding process, you might want to re-chill it, but we're roughly at about 34 Fahrenheit, something like that. The first thing we're going to add to the mix is our starter culture. This is the SM194 bacterial starter culture. 4 strains of bacteria, 1 strain of yeast. So it should produce a really nice flavor. We're also going to come back in with our spices and our pistachio. And when you use lean pork in a salami, it is going to dry a little bit lighter than if you were to use something like pork shoulder, just the nature of the color of the meat. Let's add the wine as well as the lemon zest. This smells so good right about now. Other acceptable starter cultures for this project would be Flavor of Italy, TSPX, FLC, if you're going to ferment at low temperatures. Ooh, that looks good. Very, very sticky. Very happy with that. All right. Excellent. If you want to get into salami making, there are a couple things that you might want to consider getting. This is a dedicated sausage stuffer. We're using the 1 1/4 inch horn. A dedicated sausage stuffer is going to generate the least amount of heat when stuffing your salami into its casing, and that's exactly what you want. If you're using your grinder as a stuffer, or even worse, your KitchenAid as your stuffer, then the quality of your salami is going to greatly suffer, and you definitely don't want that. Making salami is already challenging enough. No need to make it any harder than it actually is. So, dedicated sausage stuffer is, in my opinion, one of the more important pieces of equipment when it comes to making salami, and we'll talk about some of the other ones here in a second. We're loading up that 60 millimeter dried hog casing. Well, it's no longer dried. It's been rehydrated for about 10 minutes. And we are now ready to stuff. We want to really stuff that meat tightly inside that casing. So with a significant amount of pressure on that horn, I'm just barely letting it go, letting it fill up nice and slow. We want to pack it in there as tight as possible. And that's just going to give you a better product. You definitely don't want to fill your salami loosely. Otherwise, during the drying process, you will start to get cavities and voids within your salami itself. And if you've made salami for any length of time, that may have already happened to you. I know it's happened to me more times than I can count. So let's tie the salami off. Once again, nice and tight. We are going to do a bit of a bubble knot here at the top by folding the excess casing over the simple knot that we tied to initially secure the salami. Cut off the excess casing, and then if you want, maybe do a 180 with your salami and a double knot on the back end just to secure that spot. I do want a hanging point, so I am going to take that butcher's twine and kind of tie it together so that I can get a hook in there, and there we go. Our salami is stuffed. There was a little bit of meat in the hopper, and we're going to take that little bit of meat and wrap it in cling film. We're going to ferment the salami, right? That's what the starter culture does. And we're going to ferment this sample piece alongside that larger piece. That's what we're going to use to test the pH. You don't really want to jab or poke or make any holes in that larger chub because you could be introducing bad bacteria. So this smaller piece will be our test sample. The next thing we need to do is weigh our salami. That's going to let us know when our salami is ready. And for this particular salami, you can target a 35% weight loss. If you like it a little bit drier, you can maybe target a 40% weight loss. But here's what we got. The actual weight was 1,065 grams. I personally like a more firm salami, so I'm targeting 635 grams, which is actually 40% weight loss. It was recommended to stop this at 35, and so I may pull it a little bit earlier, but either way is totally fine. As we're rounding down this initial process, we do want to give the sausage an overall prick. This gets rid of any air pockets. It also helps in the drying process, and the sausage pricker I'm using comes from Craft Butcher's Pantry. It's got like 16 needles on it. Absolutely brilliant for salami making. The last thing we're going to do before fermentation is apply our mold culture. Mold 800 is a combination of two different mold strains. Penicillium nalgiavense and Penicillium candidum. And so it should bring a neat flavor, something a little cheesy, a little florally. I'm using a brush. You can actually use a spray bottle. That's often what I do. Or you can dip it. It doesn't matter. All you need is a nice thin coating on your salami. Let's wrap this up in cling film. And let me tell you why we're doing that. There are two conditions to properly ferment your salami. You need high humidity and you need the right temperature. Wrapping your salami in cling film, like I'm doing here, is going to trap the humidity inside that package. And so that's going to give us the high humidity that we're looking for. As far as the temperature goes, you can place this salami literally anywhere that satisfies the temperature requirement. For SM194, the acceptable temperature range is going to be anywhere between 75 Fahrenheit and 85 Fahrenheit. And so in my case, the room that I'm fermenting in is about 78, 80 Fahrenheit. So I'm just literally going to leave it on my counter. But if you want to put this in your oven, obviously the oven will be off, but maybe you could turn the light on. That would work. If you want to put this in an ice chest with a seed mat, that would work as well. If you want to drop this in a sous vide water bath, you can do that as well. Like I said, it doesn't matter where you place it, as long as the temperature and the humidity requirements are satisfied. This starter culture, at least in my experience, generally takes between 18 to 24 hours. And during that time, the bacteria is going to eat the sugar that we added at the beginning, and it's going to begin to produce lactic acid. That lactic acid is going to begin to lower the pH. The pH of fresh pork is usually between 5.6 and 5.8, and we need to get that pH down to anything between 5.1 and 5.3. That's kind of the safe zone. So as a quick recap, we're going to ferment for 18 to 24 hours between the temps of 75 and 85 Fahrenheit, or 23.8 and 29.4 Celsius. High humidity, 90% or higher. And like I said earlier, we're going to target a pH of 5.1 to 5.3. About 20 hours have passed, and it's now time to test the pH of our sample piece. Based off of what I'm feeling here and the color of it, I'm guessing we're probably around 5.18, maybe 5.19. We are using an Apera Instruments pH meter to check the pH, and this is another piece of equipment that I would highly suggest you taking a look at if you're going to get into salami making. It just takes all the guesswork out of it. Okay, so our pH was 5.20, definitely within our range. If you want, you can let it ferment a little bit longer, maybe get to 5.1, but I am not worried about that because we are good. Anything under 5.3 is considered the safe zone. At this point, we need to transfer our salami from this stage, because this is the fermentation stage, and we now need to move it into the drying stage. So notice how wet everything is, super humid inside that bag. Our drying stage is going to take place in the sausage maker's dry curing cabinet. This maintains the right temperature and the humidity. If you don't have a dry curing cabinet, you can obviously make one. We've got a video on that. I'll put a suggestion there. Or if you have a basement or a cellar that's relatively cool and has a high humidity, you can certainly put it in there. Our lemon pistachio salami looks great. In this chamber, it's going to hang out until it loses the appropriate amount of weight. So just quick little recap. We are going to let it hang to dry. In my case, it's a dry curing chamber, but if you have a basement or cellar, that works. The average temperature should be around 55 Fahrenheit or 13 Celsius, and the average humidity should be anywhere between 75 and 80%. Target weight loss is anything between 35 and 40%. 35 is going to be a little bit softer. 40% is going to be a little more firm. 2 months have passed. This has been in there for about 60 days, and yours may finish a little sooner. It may take a little bit longer to dry. Not a big deal. Our salami's got a nice firm feel to it, which is always a good sign. Not the best mold coverage on this particular salami, but I'm not too worried about it. Let's give it a slice and see what the center cut looks like. Loving the salami so far. It looks great. The casing has adhered to the meat perfectly. I'll put a link in the description box if you guys want to pick up a set of those dried hog casings. Smells incredible. Beautiful particle definition. Is a little bit on the lighter side because we did use that lean pork instead of a pork shoulder. But you know what? Great looking salami. Check this out. What's the bind look like? Beautiful bind. Held together nicely. Let's give it a taste. The lemon pistachio salami, incredible looking salami. And shout out to Induswamp over at the Smoking Meat Forum website for suggesting this recipe. Looks absolutely amazing. If you're not already a member of the Smoking Meat Forum group, head over there, join the group. It's a great forum to be a part of, especially if you're into smoking meats and barbecues and sausage making or salami making. Incredible place to ask your questions, to share your experience. Be part of a larger community that really wants to help grow this craft. Let's give the salami a taste. One more peek. What do you think? Leave me a comment in the comment section below. Does this sound like something you would want to make? All right, lemon pistachio going in. The mouthfeel of this salami is incredible. I'm loving the percentage of fat. I know it looks like a lot of fat, but it's actually not. Beautiful particle definition, and it's ultra creamy. Very flavorful. I gotta have one more bite. That is so good. The lemon zest brings this beautiful freshness, this brightness to the salami. I love how balanced all the flavors are. So you are getting the citrus, you are getting the fruity, the tender pistachio is working beautifully with the pork, but they're all harmonizing together and they're accenting the pork. And so really the pork is the superstar. Even the mold, now I know it wasn't incredibly covered when we pulled it. There were some areas that had mold growth on it, but I am still picking up this very slight, low level, cheesy camembert quality, which I am really enjoying. Overall, this is a great salami. It's a great recipe. If you do get a chance to make it, I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you have any questions about the process of making salami, I know sometimes it can seem a little overwhelming, be sure to drop them in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video or got something out of it in any way, give it a thumbs up. And if you are new to this channel and you enjoyed today's content, if you like making sausages, salami, be sure to hit that subscribe button and that notification bell, because you caught us right in the middle of a show that we do called Celebrate Sausage. Here in October, we dedicate the entire month to sausage makers around the world. We're going to upload a brand new sausage making recipe just for you every day this month. I'll be sure to put a playlist at the end of this video, probably about right here, so that you can get caught up from the very beginning. I don't want you to miss a single episode. Thanks a lot for joining us, and I hope to see you tomorrow. Same time, same place. Bye-bye.